What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Power Rangers Hyperforce episode 6. Yes, 6 episodes in, so we're about a quarter of the way into the show now, which is crazy to think, but it's still really good. This episode was one that was actually overall really great. It started off kind of slow, and that's mainly because the story is meant to be more serious because they're trying to match the tone of Power Rangers RPM, because that is where the show is taking place currently. So obviously, one thing that they explained during the Fireside chat was that, you know, during MMPR, when they were doing like the first couple episodes, which were based in the world of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, you know, that tone is a lot more cheesy, a little bit more hyperactive and fun and lighter story, as opposed to Power Rangers RPM, which is known by fans and just in general is known as a whole as being one of the, if not the most dark season overall. So because of this, the story was meant to be a little bit darker, a little bit more grim, not necessarily the most happy and joyous, yet they still managed to fit in those moments that were a little bit more happy and joyous and comedic, and that was good because there was that balance, and that is something that even RPM does. Even though it's known for being generally a darker season, it's good because they knew how to mix things in and make it work well. So I appreciated that. As far as things go with this episode, we do see that they end up traveling to Koronef, which that whole trip does take a while. People were actually complaining in the chat, like, you know, how long is this going to take? Is this going to take the whole episode, just them getting to Koronef? It doesn't take the whole episode, but it did definitely take quite a long time. I actually checked the clock once they got to part of Koronef, which was about 45 minutes in. So yeah, that's quite a bit of time, but it was fine. They do also find out early on about what year they're in, which is the year 2009. They also think that they may have screwed up the timeline because of how terrible it was, and they don't remember 2009 looking this grim and terrible, so they think that something must really be going on. Additionally, we also learn about what the virus is, which people have been suspecting to be what turned out to be, which is it's a Vengeance virus. So that's something that's important to remember, that yes, that is the case, and this virus has been existing for a year. So that's important for a lot of reasons. One of the main reasons is because it tells you when this was. For those that don't understand, this is meant to be kind of interesting as far as when it is, because it's supposed to be very early in RPM. Like, I mean, around the time that the main cast of Rangers probably weren't around necessarily, although we don't know that for a fact, but judging from certain clues I'm suspecting, I feel like that could be the case. This could be that early, like really, really early. So keep that in mind. Additionally, they do have it where they're trying to help with the, hitchhikers and the passengers that are trying to go to Koronef as well. And at one point, they do end up going to some gelato place, which is part of the Omega City that they land in, where they end up having to deal with grinders, and that's pretty interesting to see because they do get captured, these civilians, and that's pretty intense that as well, because they do have to fight. They do lots of different moves and stuff, and it gets really, really interesting and exciting overall what they come across and all the questions that are brought, because they're also dealing with M, who's this character that seems kind of suspicious, but they don't know enough about her, but she's kind of acted as the leader of these people that are heading to Koronef, and you know, they're getting all these messages from different sources basically saying like, head to Koronef, the Dome City, it's the safest place right now, and basically trying to describe all that. They also mentioned the gamma rays and the gamma virus, which is something from RPM. And there are certain side characters that are brought up, like Chaz, which is supposed to be a reference to Chaz from RPM, who tried to marry Summer. So that's kind of cool that they did play off of that. Chaz especially was noteworthy in that sense. And, you know, they kind of matched his kind of character to what the actual show did with him, so it kind of worked in a way that, in a very cool, smart way that I like, especially since, you know, he's not someone that you necessarily have to know, but it's still cool that they put him in there, and is nice. So as far as things go otherwise, they do fight. They do have several different situations that occur. Of course, there is a big ending. I'm trying to, save, hold off on spoiling that details towards the end. But as far as things go, all this is occurring. The Rangers have to protect the people, have to fight these monsters. At one point, they even refer to the monster that they don't know what it is as question mark, because they want to leave it for suspense, which is kind of different. I appreciate that, because they're trying to hype it up and make it more of a intense thing, and I think that's great. Again, it was really a good episode. It was slow at first because it was kind of building up towards the bigger plot points, which will be great because they'll be answered a lot more next episode. But anyway, they do all this. Eventually, at one point, the Rangers do get to morph, which is great because that's something that took quite a long time, because the energy system this time around was really figured out. And by that I mean, in past episodes, the energy system wasn't as clear as far as when they could morph. Early on, the Rangers had crazy amounts of energy. I'm talking 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 plus energy in the earliest of episodes, and in those kind of situations, it really just didn't make sense, just because it really was sort of they were figuring out what they were going to do with it, and also things hadn't been really solidified yet. Now, during this episode, morphing was something that constantly was mentioned in the chat because people wanted them to morph and everything. And what we learned is that what they've determined is you have to have 6 energy to morph. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know what that means for Zords, let's just say, for example. But yeah, as far as morphing goes, 6 energy. And so at certain points we were asking oh, they should morph. But the thing is that for example, when Vesper morphed, it took suddenly that she made it out oh, they should all morph or whatever, and 2 of them didn't have enough energy to morph, and it was just sort of what do you do then? Because Chloe and Jack couldn't morph, and it was sort of Malika had to give them energy because Vesper kind of set them up for it. So it was sort of that funny situation where they didn't even understand what they were doing yet because of what they're required to do. So it's interesting. It's a different way of doing things, and I think that 6 is actually a pretty decent number in this case, just because of how many people give and everything, and how the system has seemed to work overall. But yeah. So following all this, we also have it where the Rangers end up fighting the monster for the episode. Now, this is the thing that I've been trying to hold back on. The monster is Kilobite. Kilobite is a monster that was from RPM. He was actually very significant in the show. He had the slick back hair that was just really wiring and stuff. But he was a cool character, and he's pretty crazy, amazing in this episode as far as what he does, because this leads into us learning a lot more about who Vesper is. And by that I mean we learn what she really is, because she's not human. That's the thing that's really important, because as we've known throughout these episodes so far, Vesper comes across as being an unusual character, a character that stands out a lot, thinks that she's special. In fact, there's a point which I forgot to mention, which is that Eddie and Vesper go out alone quietly, and Vesper says, after everything is done, we should go on a date and maybe understand things a little bit better, and experiment and see how things work out, and maybe we can go to a dojo and go to a gun range or whatever. But she says it in a way that's sort of awkward and distant and strange, and Eddie just goes along with it, even though in reality there's more to it than that. There's a reason why she acts the way she does, and it's because she's an android, and that's the thing that's really, really important, that apparently they've been trying to figure out, like, who are they going to make the android, and it turned out to be Vesper, and people were even suspecting this apparently for weeks and weeks and weeks. I didn't really think about that, but that totally makes a ton of sense. Like, the moment they like made that clear, it was like, yeah. Like, I had a feeling, but I just didn't know. I felt like, nah, couldn't be. And then it totally was. And I like that. I like that idea that they made her a robot, android specifically. So, her appearance isn't going to change. It's just that, how she's made is different. I mean, she was supposed to be adopted, so she was adopted by what? A human, probably, who maybe made her or she was given by someone else. So that's kind of interesting. I actually like that whole idea. And this also plays into the end of the episode, which is where we end up seeing Vesper, because everyone's being affected by the Vengeance virus. Kilobyte uses something in his energy to turn Vesper against the Rangers, and specifically turn her against Eddie. In fact, what happens is that she basically tries to, like, kill him. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the funny thing is that, like, she was Vesper's actress, Christina, was told that, like, she should use the supers. And the thing is that, like, she was using lots of supers, and she basically left Eddie in a situation where he had, like, 4 health. I mean, he's practically dead. Like, that's pretty crazy. So, yeah. She was doing it intentionally. It wasn't like, oh, she was trying against it. Like, no, she's a robot. She was being controlled by this virus. And yeah, it really happened. I mean, it's crazy to think this. I still can't believe it. But, yeah, just really, really intense stuff at the end with Vesper and Eddie. And the thing is that, like, none of the others really knew. The only one that knew was Jack, and Jack really didn't say much because that was the interesting thing, was that he knew that he had to help the civilians, which got captured, and they did end up finding them eventually. But he focused more on that because he's like, I got this and I'll do this. But at the same time, he was seeing everything that was going on, like Eddie getting really injured to the point that he blacked out pretty much, and Vesper really just trying to take him out. I mean, it was intense. So yeah, really, really crazy, like, wild episode. Just so much going on with these characters now. I mean, I loved it. I thought it was really good, especially towards the end. The middle also with the grinders was pretty great. And also Kilobyte was, like, just a really cool character in this episode. I liked what Malika did with his voice and just his personality. I mean, really, really effective stuff overall. And not to mention, the other thing is that, about 2 weeks ago, we had Karen Ashley, who played Aisha on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, show up. This time around, and as far as things went, that time, it was just on the spot. We had no idea that we were going to be getting a guest actor that episode. We just kind of, like, we knew because there was, like, a tweet that was put out online, but we didn't know as far as, like, them informing us through the show. This time they actually informed us through the show, like, oh yeah, there's going to be a guest actor next episode. So yeah, and that's pretty cool, and we got to hear who it was right then and there, which was Mike Jin. Mike Jin, for those who don't know, played the RPM Gold Ranger, and what that kind of does is it gives you a sense as to this could be really, really early. Now you may think to yourself, why couldn't it be later? It could be later, but judging from certain points that were brought up about the show, like, how they've only had the virus for so long, and how we're not really seeing the other Rangers fighting Kilobyte or anything. What I think, and this is just a possibility, again, this could be entirely wrong, but I think could be a cool idea, is if this were around the time that Jem and Gemma were fighting and helping out Dr. K, but it was before the rest of the team were part of the team. So like that really early point in time, like they were old friends, like when they were old friends and stuff like that back then. Now again, this could be entirely wrong because this is supposed to be the same year as when the show was airing and when the show actually was taking place. So this could be that it was when those Rangers had already formed, and that's the other thought. But I don't know anything for a fact. I don't want to assume anything really because it's either one or the other. It's either that they already joined the team, or it's that it's way beforehand. Both cases could be very interesting to see. I'm fine with either. I'm definitely just curious in general what they're going to do with it. I'm just liking the show a lot. And yes, so next episode, Mike Jin will be showing up, which is really, really cool. Gem. That's great. I can't wait to see him show up. He totally made sense also. Like the moment I thought about it, I was like, yeah, no, that totally works. Like, people were hoping for other Rangers or whatever, but he's the one actor that the moment I heard Mike Jin, I was like, why didn't I think of that? Like, because that makes a lot of sense because he's in the U.S. Like, he lives in America. And he does do conventions occasionally. So, why not? So that's cool. As far as what I expect following that, hopefully episode 8 or 9 we'll get the Megazord. Again, we still haven't gotten that yet. I don't know why. But that should be interesting, and maybe in the next couple of episodes we'll move on to the next era, which I don't know what it will be. We've only jumped eras twice now, but like the first one was an obvious one. The second one was sort of like one that I couldn't predict. So I don't really know what to say as far as where they'll go next, because they went from like the earliest, most obvious point to like the latest, to like one of the much later seasons that really shows a huge contrast in story and everything else. So you really can't get any reading on like what they'll do next, other than people's opinions and stuff, which is obviously another point. So anyway, that's about it for me. I love your guys' opinions. I personally just really enjoyed Power Rangers Hyperforce. I thought episode 6 was great. It started off kind of slow, but it really built towards something really exciting and great. And there's just a lot of good stuff going on with this show. I like the characters. I'm liking what they're doing. I really liked what they did with Vesper and Eddie. I mean, oh my god, what an intense episode. But yeah, I love some of your opinions. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I personally did enjoy this a lot. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 1, and goodbye, guys.